episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
Here, are you close or?
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that has already gone off the rails before the day has ever started. You're listening to the great Fil Waters executing yet another deal on his 17th Ferrari. He is now officially an addict. He cannot control himself. He bought his 16th Ferrari just yesterday. He called Scott and I. We tried to get him into immediate into like a 12-step program. We couldn't do it. And there had to be an intervention today, but you can see he's now trying to buy his 17th Ferrari. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing good, Joel.
Very good. We failed at our intervention yesterday. I have to say there was a tech glitch on my end once again. Since we had a show this morning, believe it or not, we were covering Shanna Gardner and her now ex-husband, another ex-husband, Mario Fernandez Saldana. We were covering their court hearing. This is another case, Scott Duffy, where an ex-spouse puts out of an ex-spouse of what's the word I'm looking for? Of great wealth, of great means, puts a hit out on her ex-spouse, another ex-spouse, because of a custody battle. This time in Jacksonville, Florida. This one is a high-profile case as well with Jose Baez, the attorney who once represented Casey Anthony. We'll have you on to discuss that. So in the interim, had a little bit of the reason I brought that up, had a little bit of a Wi-Fi issue. Space Coast, who is on here right now, you can see, helped us run our show this morning. He said to me, it's not your Wi-Fi, it's your storage. I don't know what that means really in English, but it's something to do with sort of like what my closet is. Too many things in my closet. I just cleaned my closet yesterday, Scott Duffy. I'm going to continue that project this weekend. But because of that, I had a serious Wi-Fi issue. And then I quickly log back in and I find that great Scott, Uncle Phil, is on the phone. And again, I think his addiction to these Ferraris is now creeping into his work here, Scott. I wonder if do you think it is affecting his Kindred Spirits Investigations company?
Yeah, he's deep. He's deep into this.
We got to get him. We got to get him help. He needs help. We took sips together. It's like saying jinx. Good morning from Australia. Good morning to you. As everyone knows, Friday is a weird show, very weird energy, weird people. That is me, not Scott Duffy. Hey, SDS. My voice is totally going. Love Great Scott and True Crime Phil Fridays. Quick couple reminders. You can follow us on support us on Patreon and or YouTube. Please give us 5 stars on audio. If you're in the car, instead of listening on YouTube, please listen on would Phil drive a Tesla? No way. You already said you never would. Phil, are the cars, I just went, oh, this is it. Are the cars all different colors? I assume that they must be. When you have 17 Ferraris, they come in different colors. I may have triggered him today, Scott Duffy. As you know, there's not a day that goes by in my life here in Miami where I don't see at least a Ferrari. It'd be ridiculous if I didn't see at least 1 to 3 on a given day in Miami. And so oftentimes I will snap a photo of that Ferrari and I will send it to Phil and Scott, and in the text it will say like pigeons in New York City, because that's how popular Ferraris are in Miami. And I actually sent him one today, and I think that may have triggered him. As if things could not get worse, we have a little basketball hoop, a little tiny one, and for some reason they put it right by my door. So right now I'm hearing basketballs dribbling and bouncing off of basically what is my right ear. I'm about to go and scream at them. But this is why this should be the Super Bowl halftime show, because of moments like this. MJ says, all COE, I hear it literally echoing inside my head. And that's the only thing that matters. Hope Ate Fear, thank you so much. Friend of the show, always on here. All Ferrari lovers are obsessed. Very common. Hi, Scott. Love your glasses. Look great. Scott, let's get right into a true crime question here, because
Yeah.
this is on my mind.
Do it.
And I've asked you this question before, but I'm about to ask it to you again, because we've been discussing both the Adelson, look at this, alligator Ashley. I have an addiction to SDS. Please don't give me an intervention. I would never do that. And as I say, much safer than crack cocaine. Scott Duffy is a former, he was a drug guy in the FBI. He stopped drugs from happening, and he says it is safer to be addicted to STS. Scott looking dapper in his glasses. I forgot the comment you just put up, but I mean, look at Phil. Kindred Spirits Investigations. I don't want to, run his company through the mud, but you better be on top of Phil there, because this habit is out of control. Hi, Joel. This is a random, but did you work with Rick Leventhal? Yes, I did. I know Rick at Fox News. I'm a Bravo Housewives fan and yes, I did. I know Rick very well. As a matter of fact, I was at a UFC in Madison Square Garden with Rick. He's a nice guy. If you see Rick Leventhal, you tell him I say hello. And he's married to one of those housewives now. So keep me in the loop on that. Let me know what's going on. He looks good. He has a book that just came out about reporting around the world. So I do know Rick Leventhal. Scott, so the Adelson case, now the mother's arrested. There are reports that not only did they seize her phone, but they have now seized the husband, Harvey Adelson's phone. I guess that's the first question. I was going to go somewhere totally different. Could the seizure of these two phones continue to break this case wide open? In other words, the daughter, people they've got a spotlight on the daughter, Wendy Adelson, the ex-wife of Dan Markel. Is it possible that Wendy said, Mom, if you are ever taken into custody, just, don't tell them that I said that you should commit this crime? Could she implicate herself? Could there be reason on that cell phone for her to be worried, or the husband to be worried?
Sure, anybody should be worried if they put something on their phone, and deleted messages don't matter because they can be recovered up to a certain period of time. So yeah, I think our phones are very damning for any of us if we're involved in a crime. It shows a conspiracy. We can't help ourselves. And what I mean by ourselves are any criminal that's going to be involved in some sort of conspiracy. And I have used phones in conspiracy cases, and I've locked up the first, and then the second, the third, the fourth, as a result of what we have found on the phones, not only through text messages, but of course, all the other technology. But yeah, I would imagine this case is far from being over, and it looks like it was a family affair. For sure.
And Scott, let me ask you, there's been a lot of talk over about WhatsApp messages. Are they, let's say, this is hypothetical, that Donna was WhatsApping with Wendy, and Wendy said incriminating things. Because WhatsApp is encrypted, will they still be able to get information? Because years ago, apparently they were having some trouble with that.
So it's a good question. And so I'm out 5 years now. In 5 years, and I was on a wire right up until I had left, and we were not able to get into WhatsApp. And so it was a good mechanism that's been out there. I don't know. I would imagine law enforcement could sometimes be behind, but then once you figure it out and you get the right search warrants, as long as you get the right companies in place, and then to provide you the necessary authorizations, I would hope 5 years later we've been able to master that. But what I liked, the downside or the upside, was we were able to see conversations, whether it be by text or even by phone, if we were on a wiretap, and they'd be like, "Say no more. Let's go to WhatsApp." And so, you would see those. They would announce it, and then I think you would be able to go get that information later on.
Hmm. I'm just checking to see if Phil Waters, and he has not. I was just checking to see if he texted because this is an unusually long amount of time. But he's, when you have an addiction, you have an addiction. Disney Nerd says, "Hey SDS, love Fridays on SDS. Lurking through as I drive home from work. Thank you so much." And that is precisely, if you're driving, please listen to us on Apple or Spotify or Audible. But look at Lindsay Shea. Everyone wants to show your show, Joel. That's why we love watching on YouTube. We're working on some new things with the studio already because of me and fixing Wi-Fi issues. So bear with us the next couple of days and maybe a week while we make those changes. Maxirella, I like that name. Lovely way to end my Friday and very long week. Best guest, best host, best mods, best chat. STS, special shout out to Space Coast, who was walking me through, and the COE about how to properly delete things so I'd be able to get a decent Wi-Fi signal, which appears to be teetering once again. Hey, Mona, you just look at this. What happened to the other studio? We're going to be back in there. It's still there. Mainly my laziness. The question I was going to ask you, Scott, that I know I've asked you before because it came up again with Shanna Gardner. She has 2 kids, twins, beautiful twins, not now probably 10, 11 years old, I want to say, with this ex-husband, Jared Bridegan. And he's dead and he's gone. And she's now likely to go to state prison the rest of her life. So this is my simple question. Why don't people think 3 feet ahead of their big toe? Why are they not thinking about these other issues?
Oh yeah, excellent. Because that's the sad part to our jobs is when you're glad to get to find who did it, but ultimately, especially in these horrible domestic abuse homicide situations, especially with kids in place, it's I think it's ultimately that rage and that anger and that hate that comes out, and they just forget everything. It's one of the most selfish things you can do, because you're not just doing something to the person that you've killed, but you've erased the futures of your family. Um, and it's like time and time again. And every show that brings light to this, and every court process that brings light to this, there's just another one in the wings waiting. It is amazing that this day and age, the same thing just keeps repeating itself. And I just there's just that defect, and that they just don't think. And so now so many lives are ripped apart.
Do you think that there's just we were talking about this also yesterday. Do you think there's more like issues with people, narcissism, things of this nature because of the advent of technologies? What I'm trying to say is the world totally out of whack and off its axis, more so now than, let's say, 1973. Are we just more hyper aware of it because there's shows like this? There's, access to information everywhere. Do you think it's because we're more aware, or do you feel like things have gotten more out of control?
I think it's a combination of both. Domestic violence and domestic homicides have been around since, people have been cohabitating. It's just it seems to us on the outside that the easiest thing is to just walk away. And I'm not talking about the victim of a domestic violence, because I've been in so many houses where I've been educated as an outsider to see just how difficult it is to get out. But on the other end, I'm talking about the perpetrator, the one that decides that murder is the only option. That they just totally have a blank, and so instead of just to pick up and figure out a new life, they seek to destroy that which they, it's a revenge. It's ultimately a consumed with revenge, and that way they just, they don't think of themselves for sure, and of course not even giving consideration for the kids that they've created. So yeah, it's just a lot of destruction. And then of course, because of shows and so forth, what we have today, we're just seeing it so much more prevalent. But it's been around a long time.
Fil Waters, we were telling STS Nation that Scott and I, on our own dime, we flew out to Houston yesterday for the intervention to try to stop you from buying your 17th Ferrari. We actually had to use one of those battering rams to get in. You didn't want us in. We finally talked to you. You broke down. You went through 3 boxes of Kleenex, and lo and behold, we left Houston, and here it is. Less than 24 hours later, you're back on the phone. Even your shirt. Is that a Ferrari shirt you're wearing? Because I see Motor Club.
Oh, this is actually my Indian motorcycle shirt.
Indian motorcycle shirt. So, Phil, is this now the 17th purchase that you're finishing? That you're closing?
No. Actually, this is the Romtech bicycle contraption that I will be using after Tuesday when I have knee replacement surgery. So
Tuesday.
he happened to deliver it. They were supposed to bring it between 12 and 4. He shows up at the crack of 4 o'clock. And so he had to set it up. So I had to.
Those windows of time, man, they get, no matter what the window is, it's always off a little bit. Fil Waters.
Yeah.
This is massive news. You are going under the knife on what day?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. And what time? How do I send you flowers, Phil? I know you want flowers.
Well, I hope not to die. I hope to survive it. So flowers would be appropriate, but it's scheduled for 2:45. I have to be at the hospital at 12:45, and I got to use all sorts of bacterial soap and all this stuff before I get in there. Yesterday I was talking with the anesthesiologist. They were doing my pre-anesthesia, discussion, EKGs and blood and all that.
Yeah.
And the only thing I really got out of the whole thing is there's so many instructions, it's not possible to retain all of them. The only thing that I got out of it is do not use and these are her words, do not use the bacterial soap on your privates. So that was the only thing that
you heard that. Yeah.
That really resonated with me.
Was there a follow-up question on your behalf there? Because
I didn't say why. She told me 3 times. Do not let the bacterial soap. Do not use it on your privates. And I thought, well, okay, I got it. Will not bacterial soap. I'll wear fiberglass underwear or something to protect my privates from bacterial soap. So my wife thought it was kind of strange as well, but
things that you learn on this show is really amazing. If you're going to get knee replacement surgery, you cannot let the bacterial soap pre-surgery get on your privates. You will not get better COE. Cut that as a bite for the sizzle reel. That's important. So how long is the surgery? How long are you in the hospital for?
An hour.
That's an hour. That's it.
That's I'm just
it.
telling you, this doctor is my
also your dentist.
My former orthopedic surgeon who operated shoulders died.
Oh boy.
In 2020, not from the Wuhan stuff, but he had a brain aneurysm.
Yes.
Which was amazing. He's 66 years old. Anyway, wow. So it was time to get I've been getting the gel injections and they're not working. Wow. So my knee's torn.
Let me tell you something. So shout out to my brother-in-law, Benny. He is a cardiologist. He does angioplasty. So he essentially, I'm going to tell you guys a 9-hour story in 9 seconds right now. So he essentially takes like a mini little pizza cutter that you would use to slice a pizza, but he puts that into your vein and goes into your arteries and unclogs them and saves many people lives every day. The guy's always on call, always gets called in for emergencies. I had so many other questions. The main question I had for you, Phil, which I want to get back to, is How long does it take when you're in a conversation with anyone who doesn't know you before they figure out that you're a detective? Is that quick?
Oh, I have no idea.
This
I've
doctor is like,
never asked them. I
I'm
did
very,
have a lady that was. What was I doing the other day? Oh, we had gone out to California with my kids, and all of my family was out at Thanksgiving in California, which was nice. And we got back. We had to leave our puppy dog here, and so when I went in to get Poppy, when we picked her up, the lady said to me, "You look like you're a veteran, and we'll give you a discount."
very nice.
I said, "Well, I am." And she said, "Well, you look like one," which I'm not sure what that meant. I took it as a compliment, but
Yeah.
so anyway, but I've never had anybody. No, never had anybody really say that to me.
Like your orthopedic surgeon went home and was like, I had America's most respected detective in the office today. The guy was asking me a million questions. That's why I had to throw in the thing about the bacterial soap. And when I got there, he had no other questions. I was able to get away.
Well, it's all a process, man. And they're using. I don't mean to take up.
We're getting there, Nachos, Mom. We're getting to Asa. Don't worry. It takes us a while.
This is one of the most amazing things about this is there is a robotics component to this.
Yes.
So they have this robotics contraption that actually comes in, and it's like shooting the measurements in your knee because they're taking the old stuff out and they're putting this new bionic man thing in it. And it shoots this robotic thing and it places the knee perfectly in the opening in the joint. It's crazy.
So this was my 9-second story. I'm going to tell it to you right now. When I worked at Fox in New York City, before I was at Fox News Channel, I was working with a guy named Rich. No last names necessary. Great guy. I wouldn't even care if I told you, but he was my cameraman. And one of the first days on the job, Rich says to me, "I'm not feeling great, blah, blah, blah. Don't see him again for 3 years. Literally, don't see him again for 3 years. But we have, we're friendly. We're text often, whatever. We'd see each other. Fast forward like 2-3 years. I think it was 3 years. And there's a horrible storm that they're having me cover. He was the New Jersey camera guy, and I was in Manhattan at this point. So Rich doesn't care. Anyway, so I meet up with Rich, and the old timers at Fox were great because they would, like be the middle of the day. And these are guys that have been working at the company for 40 years. And they, say, "Hey, let's grab lunch." And you just sit there and have lunch, and they would tell you stories, and they may or may not have cracked open a beer. So there's a few of us now gathered. This is what we would do in news on a day where we're covering like storm coverage before the storm actually came or something. So Rich looks at me and he looked like crap. And I said, "Rich, how you doing?" And he's like, "I was mowing my lawn. I just don't feel well." I said, "Rich," at that point, 3 years ago, I told him to call my brother-in-law. I said, "Rich, did you ever call my brother-in-law?" He says, "No." I said, "You better call him today." And I'm dead serious. And I kind of laid the law down on him. Calls my brother-in-law, Benny. Next thing I know, he's in the hospital. It was too far gone for him to have angioplasty because you can only do that up to a certain point. So they couldn't remove the plaque. He had to have emergency quintuple bypass surgery to save his life. He was going to go to Jamaica that week on vacation. My brother-in-law said if he went there, he was coming back in a pine box. To this day, Rich McHugh sends me a note every birthday of his to thank me, which he doesn't have to do. But I love Rich. Great guy. Get yourselves checked out. But the moral of the story, Fil Waters, has nothing to do with your surgery other than when this happened, my brother-in-law said to me, he said, "What I do, I'm basically a car mechanic. Like they just put parts together. Like it's much different than, let's say, curing cancer. They're removing parts, putting parts in, unblocking parts. And that's what saved Rich McHugh. And with you, they are just maneuvering parts around, Phil. So Godspeed to you. You will be great."
Thank you. Thank you. It'll be, and they get you up. I mean, it's not like.
Yeah. So are you home the same day?
It's going to last an hour. They say you will be out of the bed walking. They're going to give you a walker just to keep your balance. But then the next day they expect me to be in physical therapy and on this bicycle thing they brought in here. So it's meaty. Yeah.
Well, listen, you have to take a photo if you want to, and I will Instagram that out for all of STS Nation to see at Surviving the Survivor. We will keep tabs, close tabs. I sent Phil and Scott a little gift that I'll probably get right around there, but that was not intentional. But we'll get together with STS Nation. We'll do something special for Fil Waters. Joel, can you ask Scott if he's been watching the new TV show FBI True? Scott, have you?
Yes, I've caught some of the episodes. It's a great program.
What is it?
Ann Began's a creator. She's fantastic. Former FBI and now Hollywood.
Is this a fictional show? And where do I find this, Scott?
No, so it's CBS. It jumped around. I think it was on Paramount Plus, and CBS took it over. So I forget which night. I think it might be. Well, I won't say a date. But it's a regular CBS programming, and they're true stories retold through the eyes of the case agent.
Oh, wow. I'll have to check that out. Look at this. Ski Hat Sarah. You know that you're becoming a nice big show when Ski Hat Sarah is saying hello to Boston Sarah. When you've got enough Sarahs to go around, that Ski Hat and Boston are talking to each other. It has been 26 minutes and 30 seconds, and we have not gotten to the first story. I partly blame it on Phil's knee, but now I feel bad because we thought the intervention didn't work with the Ferrari. But I'm glad that you have not bought another one since we were there yesterday.
Yeah, this was not Ferrari. This was not a Ferrari perpetrated event.
Lee Love has advice for you. After the surgery, be careful with the accelerator on the Ferrari. You're going to be much stronger. So keep that in mind. Counterweight that, if you will. Phil and Scott, I don't think you know this, but yesterday I was driving. Was it yesterday? It might have been the day before now. I think it was yesterday. It's the longest day of my life, I think. I was driving. A feral cat jumped out of a bush. Much better me than you, Phil, because that feral cat jumped out. I swerved back, cracked the front of my tire, heard the hissing right away. $2,600 later, needed 2 new wheels on the left side and 4 new tires. I'm not happy about it, but I saved a cat. That's it. I'm not happy about it. Anyway, let's move on to by the way, the COE finally posted the new improved Adelson family tour. Check it out. She did an amazing job editing this. This is why you'll see why editing is important. The COE put her heart and soul into it. Please check it out. It's well done, not by me, but by her. So check that out. It is posted under the video section. And on to the first story. We're going to be talking about the accused Long Island serial killer. Of course, his victims that we know of: Melissa Bartholomew, Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, and he is the prime suspect in a 4th homicide of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. I can't tell you how many text messages and tweets I've gotten about this, Phil and Scott. Phil, a DNA sample taken from Asa Ellerup, who is now the estranged wife of Rex Heuermann, matches her genetic material that was found on the remains of victims. The way that Joe Jackalone explained this, because I've heard so many different explanations, is that they had her mitochondrial DNA, but now they have her hair bulb. And so they were able to get a full profile, and it is a full DNA profile. It was taken the night of Rex's arrest in July. Let me stop right there. Is this a big deal? Oh, look there. That's the Ferrari dealer. Is this a big deal, or is
this being turned off? I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Well, this is on my Mac and it's off on my phone. I don't know.
It's all good, Phil. Now I have compassion since you're about to get a new knee. I won't come down on you. What is the deal with this DNA story and Asa Ellerup, Fil Waters? Is it a big deal or not at all? I can't figure it out.
You're talking about just the fact that they now have
a full DNA profile. Yeah.
Well, we talked about this, I think, a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. And if we presume the evidence leads us to this particular evildoer having done some of his evil deeds in their house, the fact that her hair shows up, I don't know where it showed up on what, one of the bags, one of the burlap bags, or
Yeah. So the
duct
state,
tape or something.
yeah, prosecutors say that Asa's hairs were found on the burlap, and now the sources say the DNA extracted from the hairs on that burlap matches her cheek swab samples, but it's a full profile.
So it would, if he committed one of these murders in their house, or he used the burlap bag which came from the house, there shouldn't be any big question about how does a hair belonging to her end up on the bag, depending on where the bags were stored. So, one doesn't lead to the next conclusion that, oh yeah, well, she must have been involved because her hair is on one of these bags. She lives in the house. The presumption is these bags came from the house. Her hair being on one of these bags is not strange to me. It's not, unless they find some other piece of evidence that connects her directly to one of these murders. And we know that what we've been told anyway is that she was involved in these crazy sex swapping stuff. So we don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is, we don't know the context in which that hair ends up on that bag.
Scott Duffy, the questions are coming in. That's an interesting explanation. Scott, before we even get to this question, is there a reason that we're learning about this now? Because this DNA sample, this cheek swab, the buccal swab, as we call it, was taken in July. Is there a reason? Is someone leaking this now? Is there a reason we're finding out about it now?
No, I mean it. I don't know who tested the swab, like what lab, but if I were to take a swab and send it to my FBI lab, it could take up to a year, and then I would have to ask for really, hey, can you expedite this? Okay, we'll expedite it 6 months. So I mean, first of all, it could be relatively fresh information, even though the testing was done in July. So I'm not sure exactly where this came from either. Like, were they doing a FOIA request and came up on a search warrant or a test result of something, or was it actually announced through the prosecutor's office?
Well, I think that, I think Newsday, I believe Newsday on Long Island broke it. Go ahead, Phil.
Well, look, I mean, don't read into this thing. Like Scott has just said, the fact that the reason it was taken in July and now we're getting the results now in 1st of December or late November, that would just be the time frame in which they got the test results back. And that is remarkably fast, actually. So I'm sure, to use Scott's word, that the request for processing was to expedite it. And that's why they're getting them back now. It's not, to me as a detective, it's just not a big revelation. I mean, they had the mitochondrial DNA, which is the little specific DNA that's not the full profile.
Yeah.
And now they have taken the buccal swab and now they have done the comparison. And yeah, the mitochondrial matches now the full DNA profile. So to me, it's not that big a deal. I mean,
as a detective, is there something you have to do? Do you have to go another step with anything to make sure that, like, how do you know that doesn't indicate some sort of involvement? And by the way, there's a lot of people in the chat who are like, I bet you she's involved now that they're hearing this. There's always been a little suspicion.
But again, we don't know the context in which that hair ends up on that back. So to just say in isolation, we have a hair, her DNA has now been fully, a full profile has been developed as a result of the hair. It's just another piece of the puzzle, but I don't see that in and of itself has an affirmative link to her being involved in the murders. I mean, that's the way I would look at it. It's nice. It's nice to have. We've got another piece of information here. And until we find something else that does link her in another way to the actual event, right now, this is evidence that we have it. We know we have it, and it may explain something later on that we discover. But just in isolation by itself, it's just not, to me, it's just not that big of a revelation.
Dominique says, I think she's involved. Karen Michael says, can we get an update on Tuesday when Phil has fully recovered from surgery? Yes, you can. I will text Phil. Probably won't be up for it on Tuesday, but I will text him nevertheless. I'm sure I'll see a Ferrari that day, and I'll send him the photo anyway. Mac 19 for you, Scott Duffy. Is Asa Ellerup's match a case of transfer DNA, or is there more to the story? Peacock, the production company by NBC, is paying at least $1 million to Asa to participate in a documentary. The victims' families are pretty upset. What do you think about this transfer DNA question, Scott?
Unless I'm missing something, I think the
and there's several people are saying there's several. That's another thing I'm trying to figure out. I think it is several hairs, and I think, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, and so if ultimately it's the hairs, and some may, that you can do some great hair comparisons, but ultimately the DNA is what's going to be very important. So if they got the DNA from the follicle or from the root, and then of course having to do, they probably did some test plucking or some hair plucking, as I've done in my time, and then of course the buccal swab, just to put it all together and ensure. Unless they have DNA from something else, the transfer is a possibility. I don't, for that period of time, it's not like I touched something and my DNA might be on that surface depending on climate and whatnot. But if it's hair, then they're just putting their just doing everything across the board to ensure that not only will a forensic scientist be able to say that the hairs are more than likely one and the same, that from a known sample, that being from Asa, and then of course what's been recovered at the scene, and then of course the DNA aspect to say there's no doubt in anyone's mind that this hair that was recovered at the scene and the DNA all come back to the same person. That's what I'm getting from that.
Scott Duffy, I can't help but notice that there's no more fire back there. It's hard for me to tell exactly what it looks like. A little Christmas tree, so almost like a game show looking.
Like my cabin in the woods.
Yeah, what is it though? Is that a Christmas tree I'm looking at? What's going on there?
It is. Yeah, it's a cabin overlooking a skylight with the snow, fireplace.
I feel like the Duffys are a family that like meditate together, like very holistic family. They say and then they ring a bell at a certain time. Like very soothing, very relaxing. This is a great point by Charmaine Lilly. She says, Joel, it'll make you feel better. Imagine how much it would cost for 4 new tires for a Ferrari. How much would that cost, Fil Waters?
Well, there's damage to the wheels. The wheels themselves, at least the ones that I have on my 360, would probably just for the wheels, probably $5,000, $6,000.
Yeah,
and then you got to put
would be happy.
That's another,
The COE just put this up. Prosecutors say Asa's hairs were found on the burlap, and now the DNA extracted from the hairs matches the cheek swab samples. investigators had previously tied hair on the victims' bodies to Asa. Does that change anything, Phil?
Well, that does. But again, you're talking about transferred DNA now, and there is the possibility. So, what is the nature? Where is the source of the DNA supposedly on the bodies that belongs to her? If that's another hair, then that's where you get into transferred DNA. So, a hair off the bag gets transferred to the body, and the DNA all comes back. So, I mean, I let evidence lead me where I need to be, and I know people like. Excuse me, my Poppy dog is wanting to get in here.
Let's see, Poppy.
Want to? You want to come up here? Come on, come on.
Poor Nugget.
Come on.
Nugget's stuck in Hawaii, suffering in Hawaii. Everyone's
So
forgotten.
I'm just saying that right now, I don't think I mean, there may be some other things here that the detectives know that we don't, and I'm sure there are, but we don't know what that source of that DNA is. If it's another hair, then that can be explained by transfer from the burlap bag to the body. And again, we're in the same place. So the hairs can be explained. We're going to have to get something else that's going to have to link it in a different way. So again, it's good to have. It's just another piece of the puzzle, but for me, it doesn't bring me to a conclusion about anything.
Scott Duffy, looks like you're about to say something, but let's lead into it with this. S.L. Connolly, why haven't any of the adult children's hairs who lived in the house been found on the victim? And then you've got Ski Hat Sarah, who says the wife is a bit odd. Everyone is, really. That's true. That doesn't mean she's complicit. That said, it's hard to think she knew nothing. I tend to agree with Ski Hat Sarah. But what about we're not seeing hairs from anyone else in that household? Is that just random?
Yeah, it's let's just say for what I like about the fact that it's coming back to Asa is it's keeping it within the family dynamic. It's not saying there's somebody else involved other than Rex, but it is saying it's still within the family dynamic as opposed to an unknown. An unknown, I think, could be, well, it wouldn't be problematic, but it would be something that the prosecution eventually would have to explain in court, saying, okay, if they go forward and say, yes, Rex did this and then took the bodies here and then buried the bodies. And then, of course, forensics picked up hair, but there's an unknown. People are going to, the defense wants to sow this seed of doubt. Here, at least now you're like, hey, we have another sample other than Rex, but it's his wife. So what that allows is it's Rex, and perhaps there was a homicide or one of the bodies in the house, or perhaps it further shows that the bags could be kept in a basement. And, just think about everybody in the family. They're touching things, whatever it is that's in your house. And so thereby hairs happen to be displaced on these bags. So why the kids aren't, I mean, like anything else, why, it depends where these bags were at the time.
Go ahead, Phil. Is that a hand raise?
Look, I'm trying not to interrupt. So
no. You're great.
The fact that there's no kids, at least at this point, DNA, hair, that kind of thing, is what we do know. And I look at these things objectively. What we do know is that this particular evildoer and his wife were involved in some pretty freaky deaky sex stuff. So it would only make sense that if these victims were involved in that same activity with this couple, and then once they're through with their freaky deaky, whatever they're doing, swapping stuff going on, then he takes them and kills them. And she doesn't know that he is doing that. And so her only question would be, well, what happened to so-and-so, and he just says, well, can't get a hold of them, whatever. But my point is here, we do know that they're involved in particular activities. They're involved in them together. I thought I had this thing turned off. So I this is crazy. So
best Super Bowl halftime show ever.
And this is Banfield, by the way.
Do you imagine the crowd? Oh, do you imagine the crowd? It's 80,000 deep in Houston, Texas for the Super Bowl. We're doing the halftime show. The crowd's going wild. And then Phil's bozo horn goes off on top. It'll go crazy. They'll lose their minds.
But my point is here, we do know that they're involved in an activity together that can answer why her DNA is on the bag, at the scene, that kind of thing. And she, again, his activity with the murders is separate and apart from the the hoochie coo weird stuff. So again, I mean, I just look at these things with objectivity, and I know there's going to be a bunch of panty waters out there that are going, oh no, all that other stuff. But I mean, but I'm not just looking at it as what they're releasing and this and that and this and that. I'm trying to determine what they know, the bigger scope of the thing. And so I just don't, right now, I don't see anything to me that would say she's involved in the murders, because she could have been involved in the sexual activities. That's why her hairs are, I think I saw somebody that said, it was on a belt of one of the, well, I mean, this stuff can be explained if they're both, bumping uglies with the same person at some point. And then they're going to leave, or he's going to take them home or whatever. Then he goes out and he does what he does. So right now, everybody needs to kind of hold their water a little bit here, and let's see where the evidence leads us regarding her involvement.
It's interesting. By the way, Ms. Trial says, I came for the crime talk. I stayed for the clown horn. Happy to have you stay. I think I saw Ms. Trial say that she also worked very close, if you're the same person, because it happened quick to see how we moved the comments around. But someone said that they worked very nearby to the accused serial killer, Rex Heuermann. Scott, just to put a little bow on this here, Jenny Pajama Pants, one hair isn't enough for me to believe Asa was there, had anything to do with it. There needs to be more evidence before I think she was in on it. There are multiple people saying, and I've heard this like on the Twitter, but I have not seen it officially, that it was more than one victim where they found this DNA. If anyone knows anything about that, I would appreciate filling me in on that. But Scott Duffy, I notice a markedly different attitude toward Asa Ellerup in the chat. Now people are saying she is suspicious. She's been suspicious all along. Do we have to temper ourselves here?
Well, I mean, you never want to point the finger, and that's why I think when Phil and I make comments, we make comments based upon what our experiences have brought us to this point, and so always look at the evidence for what we know it to be. But at the same time, you do have things that are taking place. For example, this whole Peacock episode, or this is pretty odd for somebody, even though it's like, okay, yeah, make some money because we're desolate. It just doesn't sit well, I think, especially with victims' families. Where are they all getting $1 million contracts to follow their lives? Have any of them be reached out to? So yeah, I could see it not sitting well with a lot of people, especially victims' families. things
Look
like
at
that.
this. The comments are interesting. Nina says they believe they found DNA on 3 victims. I need to confirm this. Pretty Lucky Tarot says the wifey, meaning Asa, knows more than you think. It's part of her kink. That rhymes. More than you think, part of her kink. This has nothing to do with anything, but I like it. Question to the COE. Does COE stand for correction of errors? If errors is my life, then yes. She's constantly correcting my life. Then SL Connolly, Fil Waters. I heard 4 victims with her DNA. I need to confirm this. Then this person says 3. What if that DNA is found on multiple victims? Does that change your thinking here?
In terms of her being involved in the murders,
Yes, anything.
not really. Given the well documented sexual adventures that they were on together, and I mean, it's certainly putting her in the big picture of things, but given what they did together, and now we're hearing 3. I mean, by the time we get through this broadcast today, it's going to be, there's 10 different people that have all got our DNA on them. So,
Yeah.
I don't. It's something that's going to be up on the chart. And it's going to be, because this is one of these things where you're going to put a timeline up. You're going to put stuff on the board, and you're going to say this person, this DNA is linked to this person, so forth and so on. This is going to be one of these, put up a chart on the board, and just like on television where they're putting pictures and connecting dots. So, again, you got to remember the activities that they're involved in, very personal activities where they're, swapping spit and every other type of human fluid. And right now, I mean, I just don't. I think people are mad at her, as Scott's talked about, that supposedly she got $1 million or $5 million, whatever it was, to do this Peacock documentary thing. And so she's cashing in on her 15 minutes of fame. So
I hope they're not swapping bacterial soap, Fil Waters. I hope they're not swapping that.
Well, I would, if they are, I would, I hope they didn't use them on their privates. That's all.
Yeah, so it would be horrible. This is an interesting question from Matthew Newton. Scott Duffy, you're the professor. This theory implies that he killed them the same day the 3 of them had sex, but the police have already claimed that he did it when she was out of town. Can you explain that, Professor Duffy?
I don't quite. I was reading that question. So which theory?
Well, I guess the implication here is that, so basically, to be clear, Asa was cleared by police. That doesn't mean you've heard these guys talk enough to know that doesn't mean bring her back in for questioning. But she was cleared. So I think the question here has to do with the fact that the police have said that she was out of town on the occasions of at least these 3 murders that he's accused of. And I think he's asking, does this imply that maybe she was there when it happened? I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. So I would just say then that question would go with what I think Phil and I have been saying, that the DNA, this whole story of the DNA and where it's being found doesn't make Asa any more part of the crime. It's just that it gives more credence that there's no one, that it could have been inside the house. Somehow something was taken from the house, whether it be these bags or some other, and thereby you have a trove of evidence that's been transferred in anybody's house. And so whatever it is that's used has now been used to dispose these bodies. And so it's simply, to me, it implicates more that something came from the house. It's Rex. It's not a big unknown of somebody somewhere else. And so I totally agree with Phil. There's nothing more that indicates she's involved in the murder. as opposed to the swabbing and whatnot. So now, does that mean that she doesn't know? No one's going to know that at this point. Unless there is somebody from this inside circle who is talking. But the evidence itself is not, in my opinion, is not saying she's involved in the murder. To me, it's just saying that the house and anything taken from the house is coming up Rex and her, and that we know of. Maybe they are dog hair samples, kids, other, that just hasn't been confirmed yet. But we're hearing what's been confirmed, and that's Rex and her.
Love my Sully Blue, Phil and Scott. This is a very interesting question. I know, Phil, you don't want to make false assumptions, but doesn't your gut instinct play a big part in an investigation? Does your gut play a big part, Phil? Do you go with your gut during investigations? And before you answer that, Phil, Cat's Gallery says, what is a panty water? I file mine, LOL. This will have to be someone from overseas. Us Americans don't say file, but it sounds like she puts hers in her drawers. So go ahead, Phil, about your gut instinct.
Well, just the Cat's Gallery, the wadding actually takes place while the person is wearing the panties. So I hope that clarifies it for
Get more specific.
for Cat's Gallery. And I'm sure there's no bacterial soap in the privates area there. So what was the question? It was
your gut instinct. By the way, shout out to Tali coming to us from
gut
Israel.
instinct.
Go ahead.
Well, of course I do. Of course I've used over the scope of my career, I use those instincts in an investigation, and it allows me to, based on the evidence, make investigative decisions, and which direction I need to go, what do I need to do, and so forth and so on. So sure, but again, people have got to remember that people that do what I did and what Scott did is that we enter these investigations objectively with open minds, and we let evidence lead us where we need to be. And it's always a journey for the truth. So it may be a fact that her hair are on, let's just say, for I think the most we've seen 4 people, they're saying.
Three or 4. Yeah.
Let's just assume for this moment, this discussion, that is a fact. But the truth of the matter may be that she was not involved in the murders. So people have got to understand that just because something is released, I don't know that it was something that was released surreptitiously. It sounds to me like this information was released as part of the investigation, and the detectives involved and the agencies involved to release a little bit of information to say that the mitochondrial stuff that we got in the beginning has now been matched with the buccal swab that was taken directly from her, and it's her. So to me, it's just more kind of it's an informative thing. It's not them going, hey, we got the magic bullet here. So people, calm down a little bit.
Look at McSpunky, generous as ever, gifting 5 Surviving the Survivor memberships. Look at that handsome face with his glasses on his head like that. Miss Wee Lassie comes to us from Scotland. I've got hair all over the place, whether I've hoovered or not. My pillow on my bed is always coated in hair. Some folk don't understand how much hair you lose each day. 150 hairs. That's a lot of hairs to lose each day. We do shed. Who's this? Mercy 81. Is it possible he put hair on his victims? It is possible, right, Scott Duffy? I mean, there's any kind of possible variations here.
Sure. I don't know what that would do for him, but yeah, it's very possible. Yeah, intentionally or or not, right? And that's the big question. But yeah, I don't think that this DNA confirmation does anything more to advance if they are looking at her as a possible second suspect. I just think it continues to narrow down to its Rex, the house, location, etc.
I can't tell if that says Tam or Tarn. It looks like I really need to get my eyes checked now. She says, I'm suspicious now, not because of the DNA and hair. It's this new persona. It's interesting. Suddenly, hang on. Matthew is clarifying his previous comment here. What I meant or mean is that the gentleman in the lower screen, Fil Waters, that is America's most respected detective, says that Asa's DNA is on the women because they had sex. Then he took them and killed them. I'm not sure I completely understand that. Phil, do you understand that?
Well, it's kind of sort of what I said. I'm not sure what his point is. My point is, and Scott's reiterated it as well, is that she may have been involved in some sexual activity with these people, but didn't take part in the murders. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's the simple conclusion.
And Fil Waters, what about this from Ski Hat Sarah? Is it a crime if she did know and said nothing?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the law is up there. I don't think so. I mean, because she knew something was going on, didn't report it. She is a civilian. She's not compelled, at least in Texas. I mean, you're not compelled to intervene and she can say, look, I know it was going on, but I was scared to death to say anything. You know, he was going to kill me. So I don't know that she could be, until you get something connecting her to the actual acts of the murder. She's not going to be a party to the offense.
Miss We Last See, only on STS can we go from Phil's knee to murder to panty waters. I love this channel, LOL. And again, this is why we will be the Super Bowl halftime show one day. Look at this. Most important question of the day from Peggy. So important, it's a super sticker. Scott, is that a radio/amp in the wall behind you over your right shoulder?
Yes. That's my basement
Really?
sound system.
And so you put music on. What a soothing home. So whoever called him Soothing Scott was right on the money. So this story is almost done, but believe it or not, there's another aspect that I want to cover very quickly. So there's a guy named the Happy Face Killer, Scott Duffy. I don't know if you're familiar with him. His name is Keith Jesperson, and police paid him a visit. He just admitted to his 8th murder. I believe he's in Oregon, but what he told police and what he showed them, apparently, he showed actually, there's a podcast, I have to give credit here, called The Lighter Side of Serial Killers Podcast. The Lighter Side of Serial Killers Podcast. Never had heard of it before. Keith Rovere is the host. On that show, I guess this guy, the Happy Face Killer, Keith Jesperson, read his email or sent an email mail, not email, but mail, snail mail that he received from Rex Heuermann in prison or in jail. I'm not sure if he's in prison or jail, this Happy Face Killer. So Happy Face Killer, he also preyed on sex workers, gets a letter from Rex Heuermann, according to all this. What does that say to you if, in fact, that's true? Let me read a quote here. The quote is, and this is apparently from Rex Heuermann, "You were right about letters. I have gotten a number of them." This is Rex saying this, asking for interviews, to be friends, pen pals. And one guy who sent me 3 letters asking me to write back and add to his collection of letters. The letter reads, "You are the only person," meaning this Happy Face Killer, "you're the only person who I've written back to and plan to write to." This is coming from the Happy Face Killer. Super odd and creepy to me. What would you make of this if Rex Heuermann is in fact writing this pen pal letter to this other serial killer completely across the country?
I'm kind of stumped on that because I was always under the impression that it's very difficult for a family or a loved one to write a letter and get it through without being on some sort of authorized list.
Mhm.
So you're saying that
Yeah.
one suspected killer is able to mail another, and is the happy face killer, is he like done, convicted and serving whatever?
Yes. But
Wow.
police, so let me go back here. Jesperson mentioned the letters last month when police in Florida visited him in an Oregon prison to record his confession in the cold case murder of Suzanne Yellenberg. And it's an image that I guess this podcast host then shared with Fox News Digital. This is coming straight from Fox News, which is a pretty reliable source. I used to work there, but it's not, just a run of the mill news outlet that no one's ever heard of. It's a pretty big news outlet, and they've got some
Yeah.
pretty serious
Mhm.
true crime reporters at Fox News Digital, which is different than Fox News channel, but that is what they're saying. So it
I
is
no,
it is strange, right?
I believe the story. I would, if I was the detective and all of a sudden I would take it that this information from the happy face killer comes out. Oh, by the way, I also have a letter from Rex Heuermann that I would ask to see that letter. It's not, I don't think it's beyond these killers to want to be in the public spotlight. So, having not heard of the happy face killer, and maybe he's not so happy that he's not as well known, so he wants to get in the mix of another national story. I would say that's great. Let me see the letter, and then if that letter just happened to not be available, then I would put doubt on it. But no, if it is true and they're communicating,
Huh.
yeah, that's a little
Look at this.
surprising.
Donna's correcting me, and I might be completely wrong here. Maybe I am wrong. Says I thought it was the other way around. The serial killer wrote to Rex Heuermann. That makes sense, and told him if he's guilty, he should confess.
Mm.
Does that make a little more sense to you, Scott? Because I could be wrong. I thought I must have misread the way it was put down on paper. But either way, is it odd to you that they're corresponding? Because one way or the other, they're corresponding with each other.
Yeah, it's not odd. I can see these individuals, especially when you're in the limelight communicating. I did have an individual that was writing letters to a mass killer, and so we took those letters, and it was definitely one way. It wasn't a two-way communication. And
Mm.
basically, this individual was kind of sympathizing and kind of, agreeing with this mass attack and the way it took place, and kind of um, giving her a way out. But in that was an outsider communicating with a prisoner. I'm a little confused as to these prisons allowing prisoners to communicate with one another. It's
So I'm getting some
news to me.
clarity. I'm getting some clarity from STS Nation now, because I always say best guess, better community. Lindsay Shea, the Happy Face Killer's daughter, I remember this now. She set up that GoFundMe for the family of Rex Heuermann. So maybe that's why they're writing each other, it says. And then 24 Baby Bull says, Happy Face Killer likes to write to other serial killers. He wrote to Rex first. No matter which way, who wrote which way, it goes two ways. And I knew Phil would raise the finger there, not the middle finger, the other finger. Phil, go ahead.
I would be very surprised. I would be shocked if our evildoer here at Gilgo Beach is writing anybody, because his attorneys are telling him, you better just sit in your freaking cell and keep your mouth shut. I can't imagine that he is, even if I'm sure he's getting letters, that he would be responding, and especially responding to some serial killer that's convicted, sitting around with nothing to do. So I would be really, really surprised if he's the one that initiated this. It makes more sense that the convicted serial killer who has nothing better to do but sit around
Yes.
in a jail cell and write letters to an alleged serial killer than it would be for the alleged serial killer to be writing him. The lawyers are telling him, you're not
Interesting. And then
talking to somebody.
I wonder if Happy Face is watching STS and if he's happy or what if Happy got really miserable watching STS? He was no longer the Happy Face killer when he was watching
Yeah.
it. He says here, I'm very confused on the story, I have to admit, but he says this is now the Happy Face killer speaking about Rex. He says you have to look into it a little bit, but it seems like he's already at peace in his heart that he knows that he's busted. And he goes on, the Happy Face killer, to say, I always try to tell people to own it, just to admit to it. Meanwhile, police were just there to get him to confess, basically forcing a confession out of him. And he's saying to just own it. If you're arrested, it means the prosecutor has enough evidence to take you to court and prove you guilty. They wouldn't have arrested you if they didn't. This is according to the Happy Face killer. Scott Duffy, what the hell is going on here? I will now officially say that I agree with Phil that I think that the correspondence was going Happy Face to Rex. Unclear if Rex responded, but in either way, this is very odd, isn't it? I mean,
it's yes, but two, one suspected and of course one, convicted. Serial killers, that's why do have some unique qualities, and wanting to be in the limelight, it's not out of their realm. So Phil's right. It's okay. Now I'm caught and I'm kind of sitting here. Nobody's really knowing who I am anymore. So now part of the big mix, I'm maybe send out a bunch of letters to a bunch of nationally exposed serial killers, and Rex is one of them. And it also sounds like if the daughter started a GoFundMe page, maybe perhaps they're sharing information on how the family of a serial killer or the family of a killer who may be desolate can now get some funds. So
look at this, Fil Waters, and we'll wrap it up on this story. Could it be detectives impersonating Happy Face to get a confession? Fil Waters shaking his head, but it appears from what I'm reading that there was a two-way correspondence. I will have to confirm that and let everyone know. A very confusing story. Go ahead, Fil Waters. You were shaking your head here.
Well, no.
Yeah. There you
Stands
go.
for that way. No.
There you go. Moving on. Wow. We are so far behind here. Obviously, we are going to pivot to probably the biggest story that there is in the country, and that is, as Phil calls him, the evildoer. We have to think about, obviously, Kaylee Gonzalez, Maddie Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. They are the victims in this case. So we'll go through this one fairly quickly. It's kind of a disturbing story, and it was brought to everyone's attention by a YouTuber named JLR, I think it is. I have to double check the initials. He was actually at CrimeCon. Basically, what happened, Scott Duffy, is video surfaced that he claimed to be authentic of the surviving roommate, whose name I'm not going to use, DM, but most people know it. And she is seen partying and having a good time. And when this YouTuber got that video, he posted it and wrote something to the effect of, it looks like DM has recovered. And it was from a Halloween party. She has since transferred to a different school. What do we do about this, Scott, if anything? I mean, she's in the public eye. She's a victim. As far as anyone knows, she is just a victim. But here she is trying to have fun as a 20-something-year-old, very young 20-something-year-old. Someone gets some video of her on TikTok, and the next thing you know, It's all over the social medias and the YouTubes. Process that.
Yeah. So from day one, I've always protected and would stand fiercely to defend her and anybody in her position. There's a lot of unknown, and so thereby we have to respect the unknown and not try to sow seeds of doubt or try to figure out why she did or didn't do or delayed, whatever. She is like any other millions and millions of young people, college or not in college, enjoying everyday life, experiencing everyday life, and then was thrust into the unimaginable. And so, you can Monday morning quarterback how you would react, but you have to put her in the time and the place and simply accept it at that face value that she gets to act any way she can act. And that's just the what we have to respect with regards to her as a potential witness to something she just had no clue until she did have a clue, and that's when she observed what she observed. So whatever she's doing now, she's just trying to live life and trying to get over absolute I just can't imagine what she's going through. And so she absolutely can live life and not have to look back and not look back. I mean, just to imagine that. So yeah, if somebody wants to try to throw whatever she's doing to try to discredit her, it doesn't belittle, take away anything from her for being who she is every day. But, she wishes this never took place and that life would just continue on, and she was nothing in anybody else's eyes other than just a college kid. That's
Yeah. So Fil Waters, just very well said, Scott Duffy. People are applauding you in the chat, as I am. What happened here is a video that was originally named on TikTok showing DM, the victim, dancing with friends at a party. It was posted on Twitter, now called X, by this guy, Jonathan Lee Riches, who runs this YouTube site called JLR Investigates. He writes the caption saying that she has recovered. It was reportedly filmed during a Halloween party, and then people blasted this guy on social media saying a clip of a few seconds doesn't mean she is healed. She'll likely never heal. Then another one says those impacted by homicide have the highest rate of PTSD, major depressive disorder, addiction, alcoholism, and suicide. Out of all crime survivors, those of us left behind fight on invisible battles no one else could see. Leave this young woman alone. I hesitate to repost because I don't want to give this type of true crime reporting further credence. What do you say to this person, Fil Waters, who's posting photos of the victim having a good time at a Halloween party and calling her out for it?
I think he's a despicable slug. And I think he, it's all about clicks, right? It's all about likes on videos. And I wouldn't piss on this guy if he was on fire.
I got to say, and I don't mean to make light of the situation, but hashtag despicable slug with a quote with Fil Waters underneath would be another amazing despicable. If Phil ever said that to me, I would never leave my room again. Ever, ever, ever.
Well, that guy doing that, he probably doesn't leave his parents' basement very often. So, what a piece of crap he is.
Can someone please send me a graphic that has quotes around the phrase despicable slug with Fil Waters' name and surviving the survivor, gmail.com. I got to get a shirt made of that. That was so good. I don't want to correct spelling, but despicable is D-E. I'm a pretty good speller. That's one thing I'm good at. It's the only thing I'm good at in life. But I need that for a shirt. I am not T-Pain. I'm on it, Joel. Love it, Phil. Look at this. People are upset. I'm upset about that, but it's disturbing. It's Friday. I wish her nothing but the best. And BF, the other surviving roommate. I mean, the rest of their lives, this is going to be on their mind every single day. So let's not make it worse for them. And some people should. I wonder if this is true, Phil. They say he lives in his mom's home. Who knows? Maybe it's possible.
Well, I think I just alluded to that, didn't I? So
Yeah. So this story caught my attention because it's gaining some steam. A Wyoming woman, she disappeared during a road trip recently. Her name is Kate Ferguson, 33 years old. She was last heard from in October. Surprise, surprise, Scott Duffy. The ex-boyfriend, Adam Aviles, he was arrested on weapons charges. He's being investigated. When they looked at the car, there was actually a gunshot on the car. They found a gunshot on the car, and then police say they found blood, as well as blood-stained clothing. Now, when you read this, at least when I read it, not you, let me preface it by giving it that whatever the word is I'm looking for. Anyway, I'm exhausted. When I read this, I say to myself, guilty, lock him up, throw the keys, going to prison for life. How do you see this? What else has to be done here to confirm that this putrefied blood, that this gunshot wound to the car, there's a gunshot hole in the car? How do you match it up? There's no body. She was just disappeared in the middle of Wyoming, which, as we know, is a wide open state. How do you now connect the dots if you were investigating this?
Yeah, so she's still missing, and then of course these pieces of evidence probably add to endangered missing, right? That it looks like something has taken place, some violence has taken place, as opposed to her just breaking down and wandering off looking for help, and then is lost forever in the woods. So what happens in these cases is you start with the inner circle, and who was the last person to see her, and then of course who's closest to her, and if this boyfriend is developed, law enforcement is going to want to show quickly that he is not involved, and by his actions and his cooperation, whatever else the police ask him to submit to an interview, perhaps even a polygraph, and then that's it, and then they can continue to move on. So if the boyfriend, hey, is all keyed up and very uncooperative, and you just know immediately through that first interview, then you're going to have to build a case. So it's still, October is only 2 months ago, and for especially at where they're at now, they're going to have to put some pieces together. The gun, the bullet hole is great. The blood, if it comes back to her, and is great, as long as it looks like it's blood indicative of being shot, as opposed to just a nosebleed or something. And the forensics should be able to show that with regards to how much blood, and then continue. So now you're going to go through the phones. You're going to go, what was it, alibis, etc. And then getting him arrested on unrelated charges, as we do. If we have a number one suspect and said that's our suspect, we would put the pressure on, and typically if there's a violation of probation, or in this case it looks like a some sort of weapons violation, then you can kind of tighten things up and put the pressure, and perhaps he'll come clean with some sort of interview, and but ultimately that's what it comes down to. And hopefully with the phone, be able to piece where he's going, and perhaps if there's a spot where they say this phone is for a period of time, depending on just how wide that search is, or what the lay of the land is, look for shallow graves and whatnot, because when somebody tries to get rid of a body, they realize they didn't plan for that when they committed a murder, and now they have to try to get rid of the body, and that does take some doing. And ultimately, that's you can hide a body for some time, especially in a desolate space, but my guess is they zeroed in. He was uncooperative from the beginning, and now they're trying to piece it together. Finding that body would be great, but I think it's still early in the investigation, not finding her to levy any charge against him for this.
Oh yeah, this is the same guy. I remember this. It says JLR is the one who created and posted a fabricated audio of screaming from the murder house. I remember this. He was called out publicly for it. Hadn't heard from him quite a while. So maybe there's a little history here, but definitely should be no victim shaming. Fil Waters, to you, this caught my attention because of the work, your line of work. It says in a subsequent interview, so basically they found everything they needed evidence-wise. You guys are going to yell at me for saying that, but they found blood-stained clothes, a bullet hole in the car, and then Phil, they don't have a body, but investigators spoke to the 4-year-old daughter. That's the bozo horn. No laughing matter here. They spoke to this couple. The couple has 2 kids. They spoke to, I almost fell off my chair. They spoke to the 4-year-old daughter, and she said to investigators that she witnessed her father, quote unquote, accidentally hurting her mother. Fil Waters, I know you've been there. Or maybe you haven't, because maybe special people have to do this. But in your time, did you interview very young children, or would you always have to give that to someone else?
Well, I have. Of course, we have a child assessment center where there are people that are trained specific to that function that will interview children. But I've interviewed children on the scene, and we've, depending on what it was and how old they were, my partner and I would discuss if there was any advantage to doing that, or just letting that happen at the assessment center, and so forth and so on. So both ways have dealt with kids, and so it's an investigative decision that's unique to the investigation that's got that factor involved in it.
What about, Phil? What about being able to indict and ultimately convict a defendant with no body, but you've got this sort of evidence, bloodstained clothing? How much of an uphill battle is it without the body?
Well, I have a case, I think I may have talked about it here, that we started out as a missing person case. Her car is found on the other side of town. There's blood, bullet hole in the door, and very suspicious. Missing persons had the case initially. They were called to that scene. Then we got contacted because of the blood, bullet hole, and some other stuff that looked like it was going to end up being a homicide, a murder. So we very fortunate, and every piece of evidence, I've got video of the actual event. This happened in a neighborhood. She was pulled up in the driveway. He was mad. He came out, and we see on the videos at night, but we see her car up, lights are on. We see him come out. There's some discussion of some kind. Then we see muzzle flashes. And of course, she slumps over the car, brake lights come on, that kind of thing. So we had the entire event. Then we've got him absconding to Honduras. So I've got him at the airport, getting on the plane. We've got him getting him off the plane. So we have a lot of different, and I know we talked about this before, but The only thing we don't have is the body. And we don't know where he was. The one I was talking about that he got caught in Guatemala, where we have an extradition treaty with them, and he was the barber, and they perp walked him and sent him back, and he's yet to divulge where he put the body. So it is possible. But the evidence does have to be overwhelming. It sounds like in that particular case that they are there. And so I would expect they're going to have, as we are, I think we will have a successful prosecution.
Look at Black Widow, really upping her game face, if you will, for STS with the shades. I love it, Black Widow. Coming to us from the Republic of Ireland. Is the spelling corrector lady still here? That would be me, I guess. I was correcting the word despicable for despicable slug. This next story, Scott Duffy, sadly, is from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There's two stories sort of back to back, one from the Commonwealth and one from, there's a couple stories, Scott, that we're going to get to, believe it or not, that involve either your career path and or your Commonwealth. The first one from Pennsylvania. Curious if you heard about this. This is actually very sad. I thought about my parents. My father could never do this. Now, it just kind of made me teary-eyed. An 84-year-old Pennsylvania man was arrested after being accused of beating his wife to death in their home, according to the Montgomery District Attorney's Office. His name is Barton Seltman. He's 84. He beat up his wife, Margaret Seltman, 85, in Lower. Are you familiar with Lower Pottsgrove Township, Scott Duffy?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where they lived. Tuesday, about 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon, maybe while you were teaching, they received a call from Barton Seltman about an unresponsive female. An affidavit of probable cause obtained by Philadelphia NBC 10 claimed that he told 911 operators that someone had beat his wife and she was bleeding from the head and that their kitchen had been ransacked. He was arrested. He's being charged with this murder. Scott Duffy, you care to guess the motive behind this murder? You had to guess.
84. She
84. She was an older woman by 1 year. He was married to an older woman.
Yeah, don't let age get in the way of good police work. Yeah, am I to take a guess? She was running around on him, right?
That's a great guess. That's a fabulous guess. Didn't even occur to me because I'm narrow-minded, and I would say, why is an 85? Because I'm thinking of my mother, who's probably out at a club in Miami right now. She said she was having a friend over. They're probably at some club in Miami. Three drinks in. I have to check on Carm, make sure she's okay. External line. I can't even read. Exeter line, 1930. Dementia, ? I hope it's not dementia, but a joint side investigation by Lower Pottsgrove Police and Montgomery County detectives, Scott Duffy, found that Margaret and Barton Seltman were arguing about money for veterinary care of their cat when the fight turned physical. Fil Waters, like many husbands, he got a bill, or many wives, it could go either way. He got a bill from the vet for the cat. And by the way, I just got a bill from the Tesla dealer because of a cat for $2,600. I would doubt it was $2,600, but he got a bill. He wasn't happy, Fil Waters, and he beat his wife, and she died as a result. This is very depressing, isn't it?
Well, anytime it's, you have a homicide, especially with people this age. How long have they been married?
It doesn't say how long they've been married, but I imagine it's quite a while because they're 85 and 84. But I'm curious, would you come across this with sort of geriatric murders, people who, I don't know, get violent later in life?
I don't remember one off the top of my head where it was something like this. That doesn't jump out to me. Well, Well, this is like the guy that the 74-year-old man, I think in Florida there, that just got arrested because he whacked his wife with a bag of Oreos. So, you know,
Mm.
I mean,
She didn't die from that, did she?
no. I think he smacked her with the Oreos, and then he may have done a little choking thing on there. But but
Someone
what a
about this said cat fight question. It's hard. It's hard.
well, so I mean, it goes back to what I've always said, that anyone's capable of any act under the right set of circumstances. And who knows what kind of pressure was on this man. I'm not justifying anything. I'm just saying we don't know what the backstory, what the total backstory here is. I mean, his wife may have been very annoying. I mean, we just don't know.
No reason to kill anyone. No reason.
I'm not saying it's a reason. I'm just saying that for him, he was tapped out. He was topped out. On the annoyance level, and
took him 84 years.
What do we know about the cat dying?
No, he killed the wife over a bill for the cat.
Okay, and that would lead me to believe that it's her cat.
Yes, correct. But I was going to say, what if it was his cat? What if it was his cat and she was yelling at him that he paid too much?
But why would he be mad that he paid the bill for his cat?
Yeah,
it was her cat, and I'm just speculating here, but it was her cat, and they may have had a discussion. I mean, I don't know what was wrong with the cat, but these vets are very expensive, and he may have said, just take the cat and put it in the ground. I mean, who knows what the discussion was, but she took it to the vet, and now this tremendous vet bill, and that set him off. He's been dealing with this cat. This is just my speculation. He's been dealing with this cat for a long time, and it has become very annoying to him. And now she goes and expends X amount of dollars on this cat that he doesn't like in the first place. And he's probably told her, don't be going and getting that cat taken care of because it's going to cost too much money. Well, she went and did it anyway. So he comes back, and again, I'm not justifying it, but he gets the bill. I told you not to do this, so therefore it's time to take action. So that was the right set of circumstances for him.
Wow. That's actually very fascinating in a disturbing kind of way. SL says, I'm sure the guy is violent. To your point, Phil, my dog bill was $4,500 in October, and in January, $4,300. It's unreal. Phil, could you ever look Nugget or Poppy in the eyes and say, Nugget, Poppy, I'm just not going to pay the $4,500 or $4,300. Sorry. You're going to have to just expire because I don't want to pay. I have 19 Ferraris, but I don't want to spend the few grand on you. Could you ever look them in the eye and say that, Phil?
Well, look, I had my bull terrier before Poppy here, Lily. We were told at one point that she had 30%. She had a tumor in her lung. She had a growth in her lung, one of her lungs. And over a period of a year and a half, she had 30% lung capacity. It grew that much. So it becomes a question of quality of life for your pet. And I'm telling you, we could have, at the time that it was first discovered, we could have spent a fortune and gone in there, cracked her chest, pull that thing out of there and all that good stuff. Number one, we wouldn't have known if she survived it. And we don't know what the quality of life would have been if we'd have done that. So we made a decision to let her live her life out, and she lived for another year and a half before we eventually had to put her to sleep. And that's tough, even when you know that's what you have to do. And I'm going to tell you, it broke my heart. It breaks my heart today. But these are just decisions we have to make. And, we've had horses.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that when it comes to these animals,
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal.
you got to consider a whole lot of different things.
Brutal.
And if you really think that spending this lady here who spent almost $9,000, it sounds like.
Yeah.
My question would be, what's the quality of life for her animal now, today? Did the desired results occur, or are we just, dragging this thing out to what the eventuality is going to be?
Yeah.
And
I think just before, my beloved Mabel Rose was 2 weeks shy of 17. She was pretty sick. I was giving her IV bags, the COE and I, every day for her kidneys.
Yeah.
She had an episode. I took her to the emergency vet. I was with her laying on the floor, 100% certain I would see her the next morning.
Yep.
And went home for the 4 or 5 hours to get some sleep. The vet called. I'm sorry, she's passed.
Yeah.
I still cannot believe those words. I wasn't there for her, Fil Waters, in her biggest moment of need. Not sure that I can ever get over the hump. Breaks my heart. Friday night just went down the drain, but I'll have to pull myself back.
I'm sorry, but it's anybody that has had, that loves animals, and certainly in the way you do, the way I do. I don't know if Scott's quite as
squats. Hashtag squats. Do your leg squats. That's definitely getting made. I'm not T-Pain. I need a hashtag squat.
Oh, that was pretty funny. I got to admit, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, you know what?
That was unintended. That's what makes it so funny.
Let me tell you something. When I was at Fox 5, I was standing in front of the Apple store, if you know New York City, on Fifth Avenue. It's one of the busiest, areas, intersections. And I was doing a story. Couldn't tell you why or what. I have no idea. But I guess I had to do with a pawn shop selling Apple parts. And that's why I was standing in front of the Apple store. And of course, it's called a SIG out when you're saying goodbye to the anchor. Instead of saying pawn, I said porn shop. Man, the amount of tweets and emails, it's like you can interview the president of the United States, but if you say porn instead of pawn by accident, like squats instead of Scott, that's it, man. That's your legacy now, Fil Waters. You got to live with it.
Well, I think for now, the future on, when we put our little names below there,
Squat.
You need to put Scott and in quotes Squat Duffy.
Squat Duffy. I love it. Analytical Blarney. I bet it was a stray that adopted the humans and kept coming back, and then it became their cat, but the husband didn't want the cat who wouldn't leave. So many theories already coming up with this. He wanted a pet monkey. Phil is so funny. This is a great question. I don't know the answer. I presume the answer is yes. Is the cat alive? Hopefully get to that point.
Yeah. So here's my question there.
Yeah.
Why didn't he kill the cat?
That's a great question.
The cat may have died. You still got to pay the bill. And so therefore 1 + 1 still equals 2. He reaches those circumstances. And so now in his mind, the only solution is the cat's dead. Well, I'm sending you where the cat is. So boom.
Despicable Slug was posted on X, which was then Twitter back in 2015. So it's not the first time we've ever heard it, but I do love it. This says Phil is not a cat person, I'm sensing. Fil Waters.
No, that's not true. That is not true. I love cats. In fact, I had my cat, Satch. I've talked about him on here before, who was named after Joe Satriani, the virtuoso guitar player, was murdered by a couple of Rottweilers 10, 11 years ago. And I'm going to tell you what, that was a horrible, horrible thing. I've had cats all my life. I love them. I love cats.
He now has 3 hots and a cot, someone to cook, wash the dishes, do his laundry for an 84-year-old. That might not be so bad. Fil Waters, you got to level with me here. I mean, and this is not to make light of a crime, but maybe we'll just make a little light of it. let's say this happened in Houston when you were an active detective and
Uh-huh.
you had to take this guy in an interview room. Would your partners outside be making fun of you that you're about to walk? Like, how would they handle this? I mean, it's obviously serious. I don't want to make light of it, but you got to go talk to this guy who you know did it, and realizing the circumstances. How would your fellow detectives treat you in that situation?
Well, I'm sure they'd all be hovered around the monitor, watching to see what my approach was and see what the discussion was. But look, I'm going to tell you what, one thing that keeps homicide detectives sane is the dark humor that's enjoyed inside the homicide division.
Look at this. Never seen this before. Good morning, Joel from Kathmandu.
Well,
Michael, good morning to you and welcome. Welcome. Love having. What are the people of Kathmandu called? Kathmanduians? I would like to know that. Kathmanduans. But welcome. Love to have Kathmandu. COE, I don't know if you're seeing that. She probably left with the kids 3 hours ago. I am. I'm a huge animal lover. I think I've mentioned this before. My childhood dream. My parents took me to a hotel one year. It's kind of like a resortish hotel in the Catskills, which exists, but the hotels there don't. And I once saw a chimp, very famous. I want to say it was Mr. Jiggs, Jiggs. And from that moment on, I fell in love with chimpanzees. And I've always wanted a pet chimp. It's been my dream my whole life to have a pet chimp. And I told my kids the other day that I was going to get a pet chimp. And I started to Google it. $50,000, Scott Duffy. And I don't even know if it's legal. But Scott, tell me you wouldn't love it if let's say you had a Christmas party
Mhm.
and you invited me hypothetically, and I flew up there and my guest, my plus one, was my chimp, and I just walked in and he's in a tuxedo and I'm in a tuxedo. I mean, wouldn't you love that?
I think you'd be the life of the party.
I would, right? And in
Oh,
Philadelphia,
absolutely.
man, they would get it. Like Philly people would get it. Maybe I'd have an Eagles jersey on him.
All right, even better.
Well,
Scott Duffy,
Bob Seger had a song called Kathmandu.
Oh, there you go. I thought we were going back to the chimp. Phil, would you ever get a chimp? Would you ever have a pet chimp, Phil?
Probably not, because they're nasty. My father had a pet shop at one point, and we had some monkeys. We had some minkies in there, to use the Inspector Clouseau.
By the way, Kathmandu is in Nepal, and Armand, a different person, letting us know Nepalese. So there you go. Go ahead, Phil.
And Bob Seger wrote a song about Kathmandu. In fact, that's the name of the song, Kathmandu. Oh. But anyway, I digress.
I'm gonna. By the way, T-Pain already emailed me. I can't look at it because I'm doing a live show, but I'm gonna post it on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. I'm gonna tweet it out at Podcast STS at Podcast STS. Someone here is saying Kathmandans. That's interesting. Don't know if that's true, but go ahead, Phil. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was just going to say that we had minkies in our pet shop, and they were spider monkeys and squirrel monkeys, I think. And he had a honey bear, which is called a kinkajou, which was really cool. But one day, one of the spider monkeys opened.
Someone's comment. Sorry, DT says, "What conversation did I just stumble upon?" Go ahead, Phil.
Well, remember the Pink Panther, right?
Yeah, I remember the Pink Panther,
and remember the scene in there where the guy says, "Does your monkey bite?" And he goes, "No, my monkey does not bite." And then the monkey bites the guy, and the guy says, "I thought your monkey didn't bite." And he said, "It's not my monkey." Great line.
By the way, look, it's legal in Florida to have a chimp. Debbie, Surviving the Survivor at Gmail. Send me all the information I need to know. I might do this. Go ahead, Phil.
But anyway, so the spider monkey, my dad came in one day, and the spider monkey let all of the other animals, it got out of its cage and it opened up all the other cages.
Hmm.
So you had birds flying around and other minkies, flying around, all that stuff. And there was a parrot this is a true story. There was a parrot up on top of one of the shelves, and I think the minkey's name was Jocko or whatever. And the parrot is saying, up there bobbing its head and saying, Jocko's been a bad boy. So quite entertaining. Those were just before the day we had videos on camera, on cell phones and all that stuff. It would have been a great video. But to answer your initial question, no, because they are really nasty.
Yeah, look, it says
watch what chimps do. Watch what chimps do. They pick on each other around their privates where they have not used any bacterial soap, by the way. And they pick stuff off of each other and eat it. So no, I'm not a big fan of having a chimp.
Well, there was a story long ago where he basically ripped the woman's face off. And she needed it. I think it was a transplant, but Michaela here is reminding me. You obviously haven't seen the stories about chimpanzees ripping their owners apart, have
That's
you?
true. They're very strong, by the way.
Yeah, very strong. Look, chimps get very boisterous as they mature. Michael Jackson had one and had to hand it over when it was grown up. He and Bubbles became. It's funny. I just found out that Charlie Adelson, the story we've been talking about, this big tough guy, he had a dog named Bubbles. But Bubbles, I guess, a little more fitting.
Oh, no, about old MJ, right?
Yeah, MJ had. Chimpanzees are super strong. They could literally rip your arms off your body, but they're cute, I think. I wonder what do you think a chimp's breath smells like, Scott? Can you brush their teeth, Scott Duffy? What do you think? Have you ever pondered this till now?
This is the first time that I'm pondering brushing the teeth of a chimp. So,
and look at this analytical Blarney. I would get a saddle for Ethel, and the chimp would ride Ethel. It would be amazing. It'd be incredible.
How did we even get to this level of conversation? How did this all happen?
We were talking about the cat. We were talking about the cat murder, and
we're talking about monkeys, chimps ripping faces off.
Oh, yeah, this is it. I'm sorry. Here, Bill Davis. Ask Charlotte Nash if pet chimps are a good idea. She's the lady who had her face torn off by a pet chimp named Travis. Wow, that is scary. That's enough for me. I will stick to dogs. Problem solved. My mother is very happy. She's going to call me, by the way, after this and scream and ask me if I'm serious. So these last two stories, one is related to Phil, one is related to Scott. I did it on purpose. The first one, Fil Waters, Keegan Harroz, RROZ. Ever hear the name? Probably not. She's a criminal defense attorney in Oklahoma City. That's why I bring it up. It's your old home. Okay. She was someone that you believed in even when you stumbled, said Lisa Weismiller, who met this woman, Harroz, back in 2013. Well, she is a criminal defense attorney, and she is now under arrest for murder. On April 8th, 2021, she, along with her client turned lover, Barry Titus, were arrested and charged with a premeditated triple murder of this guy's former girlfriend. Her name is Tiffany Eichor and Eichor's parents. And the motive was, that's Phil's old.
I turned the one off, and the other one goes. So I'm sorry.
It's all good, Phil.
Beyond my technical capabilities here. I'm sorry.
It's part of the show. So anyway, this lawyer marries her client, and then they kill the ex-girlfriend of the new lover, and it's because he was in trouble and they were set to testify against him in a trial. The story really has nothing other than the fact that she is a defense attorney. I thought it was interesting. A defense attorney going on a murderous rampage. Does that surprise you, Scott Duffy? Because Phil is looking at his stuff. I don't want to interrupt him. Fil Waters, now, would it surprise you that a criminal defense attorney would go on a murderous rampage?
No.
Okay. That's it. we're done with that story. This next story has to do. This is, by the way, a public service. I picked this on purpose. Scott Duffy, this has to do with you. Carjackings in Washington, D.C. are up 104%. Recently, a United States Congressman, Henry, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, Cellar of Texas. He was Cuellar. He was carjacked, a diplomat from the United Arab Emirates. But just this week, Scott Duffy, an FBI agent, one of your own, was carjacked in D.C. 2 people carried out the mid-afternoon armed carjacking. The car was found 30 minutes later. He was unharmed. There was a really horrible story. 3 young, I think 3 teens and maybe a 20-year-old carjacked a woman in New Orleans. They dragged her so far that her arm was severed. She was dragged like 750 feet. They're going to prison for that, as they should. But I bring this up, Scott Duffy, because this is actually something that could happen to one of us. We could be returning from shopping at Target. We could be returning from shopping for food for our new chimpanzee at Pet Supermarket. You get in your car. What do you do if someone carjacks you, Scott Duffy? What is your advice?
Give them exactly what they want, their car, and get away. It happens so quick, and so thereby they're just looking to take the car and whatever else comes with the car. And then of course that's it. Just don't fight, nothing. Just absolutely give them the keys. And if it's running, just jump out. Let them take it.
Fil Waters, you're coming out of Target. This was an FBI agent. You're a homicide detective. 2 guys carjack you at gunpoint. What do you do, Fil Waters? Do you take Scott's advice, or would they quickly be looking down the barrel of your 45?
Well, I mean, that's a situation where I'd have to make some tactical decisions. But if they got the jump on me, and I would feel pretty stupid if that happens. But if they were, then I would call 911.
And let me ask both of you, Fil Waters first. You're trained. You're a trained law enforcement officer. Would you have the wherewithal to get to get a description, to obviously know your own plate number? Would all those ideas be forming in your head instantaneously as you're calling 911?
Well, I would have all the information. I would have as much information as I could put together, certainly to give them everything that I can recall from the incident. And specific to my car, of course, I'd provide them all that information. But it's that's one of those things of always being aware of what's going on around you. I mean, everywhere I go. In fact, we went to breakfast with my brother-in-law and his wife up in College Station, up the home of Texas A&M, this morning, and they got in there ahead of me, ahead of me and my wife, and his wife sat. They went and got the booth. Well, she sat on the side where I would have to sit next to my wife with my back to the door. So I walked up to the booth and I just started looking, and my wife, Sandra, said he likes to sit over on that side. So they switched. So I sat with my back to the wall where I could face the front door. So that's just, and even when I'm in church, I do the same thing. I just, wherever I am, I always try to be aware of what's going on around me. And that will hopefully preclude somebody from running up on me and carjacking me. So I play it over in my head as I'm walking, especially now when I'm kind of walking with a limp. When I walk from my car to the office, when I'm out in the public arena somewhere, I'm more aware of what's going on around me, because these guys, when they pick their victims, they look to see what is the weakness with that particular victim. and that's how they pick people out. And so an old guy walking around with a limp may to them think that this is an opportunity. And so
well, they'd be messing with the wrong old guy in that case, because
you know what, if I see him coming, I'll be guns up. Yeah.
Going to be a problem for those guys. I would hate to see it, but if anyone's going to handle their business, it's going to be Fil Waters. Kel B, Joel, are you aware that when the temperatures drop low enough, Miami has iguanas falling out of the trees? Yes, I am, and I don't like that because I have iguanas in my trees. But if it gets below freezing, they drop. They don't die, but they just drop. Very important information here at the end of the show from Andy School, my friend in Detroit. Chimps are 5 times stronger than a 180-pound man. Miss We Last See cautioning me again. Chimps are not pets. They're wild animals. They're aggressive when they're fully grown. I feel like I could tame a chimp, but maybe that's just my narcissism. Paulie says chimps probably brush their own teeth. This is probably the best question of the night. MG, what have I stumbled on? That's not the first question like that of the night. I have to agree with this comment. Phil looks 10 years younger tonight. I'm not sure what is different. I think it's the lighting. I think it's his eating habits. I think it is the man upstairs. I think it's all of these factors combined into one, and that he's going to get a brand new knee come Tuesday. Andy School says boxers are pretty good size. 45 pounds up. Ethel's a runt of the litter. She's about 45, I would imagine. Haven't weighed her in a while. I can see her ribs. For people used to yell at me at the dog park that I don't feed her. I feed her a lot, but she's just starting to fill out. Phil, it's Friday. That's why we tune in. I guess this brings to a conclusion yet another scintillating true crime podcast. Fil Waters, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, how are you feeling just days ahead of this knee replacement, and any special plans in place this weekend since you're going to be out of commission for a little bit in terms of walking around? Are you going to go take a walk somewhere this weekend?
Well, no, as I understand it, well, I'm excited about it because this knee is, after years of martial arts, Marine Corps, and weightlifting, and police work, SWAT teams, kicking doors, and motorcycle wrecks, and four-wheeler wrecks, and that kind of thing. It's just time. So I'm excited about it, and I've found out more friends of mine that have had knee replacement surgery than I ever dreamed of. And the optimum word seems to be, once it's done, it's fantastic. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And it's going to be pretty interesting. I had it operated on 40 years ago when I was in the Marine Corps, but it finally given up the ghost. So here we are. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, SGS Nation will have your back.
Thank
you. We will send you our well wishes. Scott Duffy, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you I'm impressed with your Eagles. They're performing very well this season. Jalen Hurts. Are you optimistic? Is there a Super Bowl on the horizon this year?
Yeah, I definitely think they learned from last year. So I think they have the kinks knocked out, and they're gonna be the champs.
Now, if they go to the Super Bowl, Scott Duffy, would you pry that wallet open, and would you consider going? Are you that much of a fan?
I tell you, with my youngest, who is a huge football fan, I've always tried to figure out between football and of course our Phillies. So I think I text you when we were the champs in Miami, the last game. Of course, in one of the playoffs they didn't make it, but I'm always looking for a way to see if I can get to one of the big games.
I was most disappointed that we didn't have a Phillies Astros World Series.
Yeah, isn't that something?
I really was. I was very, very disappointed about that.
Yeah, Well, there's always next season, as they say. By the way, Debbie Gibby is the lawyer you know on Monday or Tuesday. He's on this Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, big YouTube guy. Here he's an excellent human being. He's going to be on to discuss the Adelsons with us, along with John Singer and Tim Jansen. That's going to be Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll fill you in the rest of the week at Podcast STS. That's where I post showtimes on X, formerly known as Twitter. It is at Podcast STS. Good luck on your knee replacement, they say. Great show, Phil and Scott. On and on it goes. We will, look at this. Sunshine in Arizona. Michael Jackson loved his chimp Bubbles, and I think it bit his nose, and that's why he gave him up and why he required surgery. Sad. Interesting. I did not know that. Scott Duffy, did you know that?
I didn't know that. No.
I don't know that that's fact.
Space Coast, who's a diehard Niners fan. Niners winning this weekend. Space Coast, this Wi-Fi is clinging on for dear life. We're going to have to figure something out. The COE is going to tell me it's my settings. It's not my settings. It is not my settings. Scott, look at this. Don't forget the Texas Rangers won the World Series. Oh, boy, it's getting ugly now. Go Dallas Cowboys.
There you go. There you go.
There you go. Look at this World Series. Look at this. This is my new friend. You never know when you need a shoulder. It's so hard to say this. Philadelphia shoulder surgeon. World Series champs next year, Phillies. You heard it here first. Go. I'm just going to call you PSS, but you never know when you need a surgeon, as Fil Waters can attest to. Peter has this is Peter Tragos. I didn't know who Peter was. This is the lawyer you know. He has gorgeous hair. Yes, he does. Another great Friday. I think, my guys have beautiful hair too, Phil and Scott. So there you go. I think I've run out of things to say. Black Widowers freezing in the Republic of Ireland. Someone yelled at me, by the way, in an email, said to please not tell them that I was feeling cold. As I was telling them, it was dropping into the 60s. It's warmed up a little bit, but it's still a bit chilly. And I've got my hoodie a la Scott Duffy. So that's it. I've officially run out of things to say. Have a lovely weekend. Say some prayers for our friend Fil Waters. We will check in with him. Until then, love you, America. Love you, Philly. Love you, Texas. Love you, the Big Island in Hawaii. Love you, Catman. Love you, Catman.
Adios.
Adios.